Okay, I didn't see this coming. We got a megaton bomb development with the Vikings. Um, Kwesi's out. They fired Kwesi. Um, I'm very shocked. I'm very, very shocked that this happened, and it happened when it did. I'm not saying it's not warranted, but I'm really, really shocked that this happened now. Um, I mean, obviously it's been weeks since the season ended. Um, so so just the news is that Kwesi has been relieved of his duties, aka fired. And they say relieved of your duties, that means you're fired. Rob Brzezinski's going to be the guy in charge through the draft. That the official release said through the draft. So they're not planning to hire anybody new now. It's going to be sometime later. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that. But I mean, Rob's been the cap guy for many years. I mean, for the Spielman years and going way back. You know, I didn't see anything about any like other people getting fired. I mean, I don't know if they're like scouting department, if anybody there is going, but I think most Vikings fans are going to be pretty happy that Kwesi's not going to be doing another draft. I mean, this past draft, Donovan Jackson looks like he's like a legitimately solid pick, but I mean the draft record for Kwesi, which I guess is now final, pretty fucking bad. I mean Rick Spielman got fired primarily because his drafting was terrible for years, and I think that's pretty much what got Kwesi fired. And there's going to be spin on this from a lot of the JJ cult, but the JJ McCarthy disaster is what got Kwesi fired, because this it was always going to be that this is does JJ McCarthy pan out into being something, that was going to be the difference, between keeping the job and not keeping the job. And now I thought personally, I mean, I've made no secret of my opinion on previous videos. I was never too enthusiastic about the JJ McCarthy pick in the first place. I wasn't enthusiastic about him of the potential QBs. Obviously, we could have drafted Bo Nix. We could have just stood pat and drafted Bo Nix. I'm not one of those people who complains that, why didn't we trade up for Drake May? I mean, you were going to have an unbelievable offer to get up there and get him. So and the Patriots would have had to be willing to trade out of that spot too. But it's the McCarthy pick, which I was never a fan of, but then it's all the subsequent decisions they've made since then, for almost 2 years now, that led to this point. Because there had been a lot of talk that maybe KOC didn't want McCarthy, but it was a Kwesi move. I don't know. Maybe that stuff will come out officially at some point, of like who wants who. I mean, KOC's certainly, every time he talks about JJ McCarthy, it's like he thinks JJ McCarthy can be the guy. I think you read between the lines sometimes. The stuff that gets said, it's like he's obviously not happy. KOC is obviously not happy with McCarthy, and where that's gone. So with that might come out that there was some tension in the front office, as far as is Kwesi just doing what he wants and not really consulting with KOC or something. I mean, I don't know. I'm not one of these people who goes on social media, and we're already into that part of the off season where random schmoes go on social media and act like they're insiders. I don't pretend to be an insider in any shape, way, or form. I am just the schmo giving an opinion. But so I don't know if that was, if there was a tension between coach and GM. I mean, that's never good for an organization, but I don't know if there was tension between them and that's what led to this. But I think by and large what led to this is the JJ McCarthy pick and all the subsequent QB moves after that. Because look where we are now. We're looking, and I thought that, obviously we were 4-8 this past season. And McCarthy's a disaster, and it was looking like, oh my God, they might clean house after this disaster. They win the last 5. McCarthy, there are people who build up the win streak and a couple of the McCarthy performances as if it was like Joe Montana in a Super Bowl. It's like there was a little bit of improvement in a couple of the games. Of course, he get hurt still. So there was a little bit of an improvement, but, and I did think that I thought just the tiny bit of improvement in McCarthy and just the fact that they won out was going to make both coach and GM safe into next year on scorching hot seats. But yeah, I thought they were both going to be safe at that point. And maybe they would, and it's like maybe they would be anyway, because who knows? The Wolves aren't super reactionary owners. Zimmer and Spielman got a couple years longer than some people would have maybe given them, but yeah, it was obviously deemed that it's like, no, this isn't working. This isn't working with this quarterback and the subsequent decisions. I don't think that the fact that Sam Darnold is now in a Super Bowl is specifically was like the tipping point that would have sent this over the edge for them. But it doesn't help. It doesn't help the optics of the decisions that were made, and and that stuff. But and that too. It's like, well, who really was in charge of deciding ultimately to move on from Darnold, to not really try to keep Daniel Jones, to not go get, I mean, God forbid, Aaron Rodgers, but you know what I mean. I didn't want him in here, but ultimately the GM picks the players, but they pick the players within what the coach wants. I think that's ideal. I don't think that originally, just my opinion, I don't think KOC was anti drafting a quarterback, but again, maybe we'll find out a little more about specifics of what happened there. But ultimately, I think boil it down to, I think JJ McCarthy cost Kwesi Adofo-Mensah his job. I thought they were going to get 26. Maybe run it back one more time. Obviously, there's talk about, well, maybe they're going to go out and bring in a quarterback. I mean, there's the home run fantasies of maybe you can trade for Joe Burrow, maybe you can trade for Lamar Jackson or something. I think it's very unlikely that they're going to make any of those kinds of moves. I think especially now with basically an interim GM, I certainly don't think they're going to do that. But there's been talk that they're going to go get another better competition at quarterback. There's talk, I think it just came out yesterday, that the Falcons are going to release Kirk. I don't think that's the move. I don't think that's what they're going to do. I know KOC likes Kirk. Obviously, I love Kirk, but I don't think that's necessarily the move that moves the needle. But I think this is a sign, though, because again, I don't think the Wolves do this if it's just okay, we're still kind of waiting to see on JJ McCarthy, or what we think of JJ McCarthy. I think this is they see what I see. They see what a lot of fans see, that JJ McCarthy is a flop of a pick and is not going to be a franchise quarterback. He is not going to be worth everything they've done. and some of the decisions they've made. You know, not saying Sam Darnold was, the next Patrick Mahomes, but he could have stayed here and been our guy. Maybe it wouldn't have worked out long term. Maybe it would have worked out long term. Maybe it won't work out long term with Seattle. Maybe this is a one and done thing for him. But I think the optics are really, really bad about what's going on with this team. And then you just add on that last year's free agent class was really, really bad. Like this, remember the whole competitive rebuild. Well, this is what they were building towards. Kwesi coined the term competitive rebuild. This is what they were building towards, for his time here, and it was a flop. And it's like, okay, we're not going to pay the quarterback, but then we can go pay all these other free agents. We pay all these other free agents. And by the way, you have to pay a lot of these free agents because you can't draft. They haven't drafted at all. A lot of the teams that are really successful right now, they're that way because they've drafted really, really well. We have not been drafting. We haven't drafted well overall for like a decade. Like that's what got Rick Spielman fired, because he didn't draft after that great 2015 class. His drafting went in the tank with a couple of exceptions like Justin Jefferson, Brian O'Neill, Darisaw, but he wasn't drafting depth well at all. Defense fell apart. Offense, was held up by Kirk. And that got him fired. It got him fired, and I think you try to get like the Kwesi's first time GM. I forget what his official job was before, because he was with was he with the Browns or 49ers? He'd been with a couple teams. I can't remember exactly what his job title was before he came here, but it's like it was kind of an outside the box hire. Like he's not necessarily a football background guy. He's more like analytical type of guy. And what was his first move in his first draft was that ultimately disastrous trade down that ended up with the Lewis Cine pick. I've mocked Vikings fans for years about constantly bringing up that we could have drafted Kyle Hamilton. Well, we could have drafted Kyle Hamilton, and instead we traded down, didn't really get the value we should have, and then had a disaster draft. Like the hits on drafting for Kwesi in the 4 drafts he got are very, very minimal. Like I think Donovan Jackson looks like he's he'll be a solid piece to the offensive line for a while. Addison, star quality, but of course he's a fucking moron. And Dallas Turner came on a lot last season, so it looks like he's going to be a piece, but it was always going to come down to that McCarthy thing. And he had the big free agent crop two previous off season now with the with Gink and Gennard and all those guys. But you can't rely on hitting on free agents like that year after year. You got to draft well. You want to stay a GM in this league, you got to draft well, and he ain't drafted well. I did think he was going to get one more year, one more draft. I'm relieved that he's not going to get this draft. We're picking like middle first round. We got some comp picks. We're going to have more picks this year, I think, than previous years. I think it was last draft we didn't have that many picks because we traded. That was another thing that he did. In that 24 draft, he trades up. Whether you want to believe it was Sean Payton tricking him into doing it, he trades up a couple spot or two to get McCarthy. Then he trades way up to get Dallas Turner. So that depleted the draft capital for last year, and of course that you're not drafting well, then you don't have the picks, then you got to go sign free agents. Yeah, you got the cap space, but even that, like they're in a worse cap space now. They're in a pretty bad cap space coming into this offseason now, even with the rookie contract quarterback, which was what we were told for years. Oh, once you get the rookie contract quarterback, everything's great. Your cap's going to be wonderful. Well, it isn't wonderful, and I'm sure they can move off of a lot of that stuff, but I'm not saying Kwesi didn't do anything. It never did anything right, but ultimately, it's 4 years of pretty bad drafting. in some cases spectacularly bad drafting, and included in that is the J.J. McCarthy pick. And I absolutely, we may never get this officially, but I guarantee the Wilfs see J.J. McCarthy for what he is. That he's not, he maybe can hang around in the league a little bit. He's never going to be the kind of quarterback that we needed him to be. And I think, now Kwesi gets credit for bringing in Sam Darnold in the first place, but then letting him go, it was like, did KOC want that? Did he really want to, did he really want to, really hand this whole thing to McCarthy like that? There was obviously talk of Aaron Rodgers. Maybe they were thinking about it. We know they at least made an offer to Daniel Jones. We know they made some offer to Kirk coming off the injury a couple years ago. So we don't now. I don't think we'll ever know for sure exactly who wanted what how much they wanted it, all that stuff. But I think it is. I think the fact that they let go of Kwesi and not KOC tells me that the McCarthy thing is much more of a Kwesi thing, and I was a little dubious of that until today. But yeah, I think this indicates that the McCarthy thing and the subsequent QB decisions really were led by Kwesi, and it's led us where we are. Like coming in this offseason, I was hoping we could. I'm hoping we can. I'd love it if we could swing some massive deal and get in one of these QBs who, we don't like Joe Burrow. We don't even know if he's actually available in a trade. Like, I'm sure the Bengals are gonna not be like, hey, let's get rid of this guy. Why would they want to suddenly get rid of the guy when he's still a young guy? But it's going to be interesting now because we'll see what they do with QB. I don't know. Like, Rob's been known as the cap guy for years, so I'm sure he'll be able to make moves in a good way for the cap. I don't know if this is going to mean maybe more of a real teardown. Will they do more of a real teardown and really rebuild? Because this is an old roster. That's what happens when you have to fill up your roster with free agents because you're not drafting well. This is a pretty old team. Does that mean they're gonna go more in the rebuild mode? I don't know. I don't think we'll know that for sure until they have like a full-time GM. And maybe Brzezinski will end up being the GM. I don't know. But again, I haven't seen anything about any scouting department guys or anything like that getting fired. So this seems to be just Kwesi. So, and again, this news just dropped. Like, I hit record on this maybe 15 minutes after hearing it happen. So I don't know yet if there maybe if even more stuff has come out just since then. But yeah, it's going to be this was already going to be a very, very interesting offseason, but now it's going to be even that much more interesting. I think as far as the Kevin O'Connell of the situation, I think this I think it would have been way over the top to fire Kevin O'Connell after this season, because ultimately he has won 13 and 14 games in half of his seasons. And obviously this season went off the rails pretty fast, but I don't think he was the culprit. Like, and if it comes out like for sure that like he wasn't really the guy making the decision about what to do a quarterback, then he becomes a very sympathetic figure, because I've ripped him too for seemingly buying into the whole QB whisperer thing, and maybe buying into that hype a little bit. But maybe this wasn't the QB he wanted to whisper to. Maybe he wanted to keep Sam Darnold. Maybe he wanted to keep maybe he wanted to make a better effort to keep Daniel Jones or something, or maybe he even wanted to keep Kirk. But I it's gonna be a very interesting thing, the fallout from this, because this was really unexpected. I did not think this was gonna happen. There was no expectation for me that there was gonna be any major shakeup. I mean, we got they fired the offensive line coach a couple weeks ago. That was like, that's probably gonna be about the biggest change for the staff for the offseason, and now this happens. So well, I've been going 20 minutes. But yeah, so I'm not sad to see Kwesi go. I mean, he doesn't seem like a bad person or anything. It's just he's not cut out for this. He's not cut out for this. He, didn't have a football background, and it showed. And we passed on some players in the draft that we shouldn't have passed on, and he made some trades that were bad, like trades within the draft that were bad. But I think he's safe. I think he is still the GM of the Vikings today. Even if they let go of Darnold and he goes to the Super Bowl, if JJ McCarthy looked the part this year, even if he looked the part and they still were 9-8, I mean, they were 9-8 in spite of JJ McCarthy. They were 9-8 because the defense was great. Thankfully, I didn't do a video on this. Thankfully, Brian Flores is sticking around. There's still a couple. I think there might still be a head coaching job or two out there, but I think he's going to be sticking around, so that's great. I think, but yeah, I truly believe that Kwesi does not get fired if the Wilfs think JJ McCarthy is the guy. And you can say all you want about, well, he's only this age and he's only played this many games. Well, you can think that, but the Wilfs are the ones cutting the checks, and it looks to me from this move that they don't think that the decisions made at quarterback were anything other than a disaster. And so now we will see what happens. Obviously, we're still a couple weeks out from even. The Super Bowl isn't even for over a week still, but we'll see what happens. I mean, the offseason to-do list basically stays the same. You got to cut a lot of cap. You got to figure out if at minimum a competition QB. You got to figure out, what are you going to do in the draft? I'm comforted that the cap wizard is going to be the guy running it apparently through the draft, and maybe he'll just be the guy. Like, why can't he just be the guy? He's been very good at his niche for years. Why can't he be the GM too? But they'll probably hire somebody. I won't have the foggiest idea who the hell they would hire, because as much as I don't know some of the names that have been hired as coaches in this cycle, I really wouldn't know the names of GM candidates. But yeah, so that's the end of the Kwesi era. I think it's going to go down as assuming that McCarthy never figures it out, which I don't think he will. I think it's going to go down as just a mostly a bad hire. I mean, you can say, well, they won 13 and 14 games in half of his seasons. I think that's more of a reflection on, you did hire a good coach. I think Kevin O'Connell is a good coach. I think he's got his own issues. I think he needs to give up play calling. He needs to kind of let that go. He's got his own issues, and he could still be like, if his Kevin O'Connell's seat is still going to be hot going into 2026, no question about it. But look at some of these coaches who've been fired already, like this offseason. Like, they fired Sean McDermott, they fired John Harbaugh. Coaches have been fired like a year or two after winning a Super Bowl. Kevin O'Connell doesn't get infinite cracks at this. But I think this shows that ownership has a lot more faith in Kevin O'Connell than they did in Kwesi, that's for sure. So I've talked a long time here. But yeah, this is a There's a lot to talk about with this. This is a big move. This is a really, really big, stunning move. But I'll say again, I think if the ownership viewed J.J. McCarthy as truly a franchise quarterback of the future for the Vikings, I don't think Kwesi's in any danger. Even with some of the other poor drafting and other mistakes, I really think he was gonna survive, because ultimately if you hit on the quarterback, you're pretty safe as a front office guy. But they didn't. They blew it in a big way. They blew it with McCarthy. They blew it by letting Darnold go. They blew it by not making a real effort to bring in anybody who could compete with JJ. I think KOC probably sees this very differently, and I think he sees it as, because he's going to see it too now. And we'll see. I mean, I don't know what kind of input he gets with interim GM, versus Kwesi, and I'm not going to ever pretend that I know, but, I think, just my opinion, I think he's going to be much more apt to want to bring in, the highest end quarterback you can get to at least compete with McCarthy, at bare minimum, make McCarthy have to really earn it, because McCarthy has never had to earn it a single day in the NFL. 24, he gets hurt in preseason, maybe would have played, maybe not, but they just handed it to him in 25, and look what happened. So I don't know. We'll see what happens here, but it's going to be a very interesting offseason now to see what the approach is like. I really do wonder if they're going to go into more of like a full, like a tear down and rebuild. And I'm never opposed to I'm never in favor of tanking or anything like that. But I feel like this division, you were 9-8 with all this disastrous stuff going on, bad quarterback decisions. I think you can bounce back quickly. It's a league of quick turnarounds. You got two teams that are in the Super Bowl, and neither one was in the playoffs last year. I don't think Seattle was in the playoffs last year. I know New England wasn't. So, you can turn around really fast in this league if you make the right decisions, but we were not making the right decisions. And hopefully they make some good decisions this offseason, and I'm going to make the decision to stop recording. But Kwesi, it's been real, pal. You should have drafted better. You should have just drafted Bo Nix. Let's be honest. Just draft Bo Nix. He'd probably kept his job, or just keep Sam Darnold around. You'd probably keep your job. But those are the decisions that were made, and you must suffer the consequences.